You ever come home, bone-tired, just looking for peace, and wind up standing at the edge of a fight you never wanted? That was me, back in Texas, middle of a blistering summer, thinking I'd spend a couple months cleaning up my dad's old ranch. Instead, I found myself staring down a whole neighborhood. Fancy lawns, big gates, new SUVs, all of it built on the water that ran through my land. And you know what I did? I shut it off, cut every last drop, turned 342 houses bone dry. Not out of spite, no sir. Out of principle, and because sometimes justice doesn't knock, it breaks down the door. Let me walk you through it, because this isn't some tale about petty neighbor drama. This is about what happens when the world forgets where things come from, and one stubborn rancher decides to remind him. The morning it all kicked off, the sun came down like a punishment, that white-hot Texas sky squeezing the air dry. The only sound was cicadas screaming, and under the oaks, even the cattle gave up moving. Down by the creek where my father used to cut hay, I twisted the old red valve, felt the pipe shudder once, and then go quiet. Across the field, you could watch the water vanish from the ditches, sprinklers coughing themselves to death mid-spin, leaving patches of steaming grass that smelled like dust and cedar. I just leaned there, sweat sticking to my shirt, letting that moment settle. Felt like shutting a door that should have been closed a long time ago. See, the folks up in Cedar Mesa Estates, they've been running a buried pipeline straight through my land, feeding their subdivision with water from my creek. Never asked, never paid, never even left a thank you note. I tried being polite. Letters, phone calls, even sat through an afternoon in a marble-floored lobby while some assistant promised, "We'll look into it." Nothing changed. That day, a white SUV rolled up fast, spooked the chickens so bad they hid under the barn. Out steps Bethany Whitfield, HOA president, pastel blouse, shoes sinking in the sand, clipboard clutched like a sword. "Mr. Remy, what do you think you're doing?" She tried to sound sweet, but that voice had an edge. I told her, managing my water. She got red under the foundation, started spouting off about community infrastructure rights, pipelines in place for years. I let her rant, then asked if she'd seen her name on my deed. She hadn't, but she argued they had rights. We went back and forth, she threatening the sheriff, the county, the state. All the while, I could see that fake lake they'd built looked pretty from the HOA's glossy flyers, but from where I stood, it was just shallow and small. Finally, I told her to ask herself where her water really came from. A gust of wind snatched the papers off her clipboard and scattered them across the yard like a flock of pale birds. She chased them, heels slipping, and I just stood there, letting her see what it was like when the land said no. She warned me, actions have consequences. I'd heard it before. Watched her drive off in a swirl of gravel. Knew the phone would ring soon. Lawyers, officials, maybe even the sheriff. But right then, the only thing I heard was the creek, the land finally quiet, honest silence. I set down my glass of tea and waited to see who'd miss the water first. A couple weeks earlier, I'd just come back, told myself I was only staying long enough to settle Dad's affairs, maybe rent the place out. But stepping onto that porch, seeing his old hat by the door, smelling cedar and dust, I knew I wasn't leaving again. Even got a letter, fancy invite from the HOA to their summer meet and greet. My mother, knitting at the table, just shook her head. "Your father always said the only thing worse than drought was neighbors who wanted to own your well." I went anyway. Figure no harm in saying hello, see what the fuss was about. That pavilion by the HOA's fake lake, full of white canopies, plastic wine glasses, folks in starched shirts who'd never dug a post hole in their lives. Bethany found me quick, introduced me to Preston Hale, the developer, sharp suit, quick smile. They pitched buying the ranch, expanding the recreation area, golf course, whatever. Offered a sum that made me laugh. "Ma'am, that wouldn't fix half my fence." She didn't like that answer. Warned me life was easier with the HOA than against it. As I left, she touched my arm. "Your father said the same once." Eventually, he understood. The words echoed in my truck the whole way home. That night, I found my father's old folder, 15 notices of violation from that same HOA, all neat, annotated, no jurisdiction. Keep for record. I realized this wasn't a new fight, just one that had passed from father to son. The next morning, I called Marcus Reed, old friend, surveyor, the kind of guy who still wore a canvas vest and smelled like motor oil. We walked the south pasture, checking fence lines. There, under a bright new post, fresh dirt, someone had been digging. I pulled out Dad's old survey map. Anything past this line's mine. We set up the tripod, took readings, and found the pipeline buried deep, 27 feet inside my property, running straight from the creek. The hum of machinery under my boots was a heartbeat I hadn't heard before. Marcus uncovered the pipe, pressure gauge trembling. Well, I'll be damned. They ran it straight from your creek. My jaw clenched. They weren't just trespassing, they were stealing. We took photos, marked coordinates. I drove into town, found Sarah Coleman, property and water rights attorney, sharp-eyed, tough as nails. She scrolled through the evidence, face going hard. This isn't just trespass, Jake. It's theft in bold. She told me to document everything, stay by the book. HOAs, she said, act like they own the world until someone makes them prove it. That night, walking the creek by flashlight, I felt the water cold too fast. You just drilled into the wrong man's land, I whispered, and I knew tomorrow the real fight would begin. First stop, HOA headquarters, air thick with new carpet and citrus cleaner, folks in suits trying to look busy. I walked into their conference room, Bethany and her lawyer, Richard Coleman, already waiting. They tried to play it calm, claimed standing rights to the water, waved some paperwork they said my dad had signed. I called their bluff. Sarah stepped in. Cool as you please, proved the document was forged. Wrong handwriting, notary long retired, county seal photocopied. The room went quiet. Bethany's smile slipped. Dave Wilson from the water board started projecting audits. $200,000 in fees charged for water upgrades that never happened, money traced to a shell company run by Bethany. When the mayor ordered an interim board and suspended the HOA's control, the look on her face told me everything. The illusion was gone. The truth spread like water through cracked earth. I didn't gloat, just watched years of quiet disrespect finally break. On the way out, Sarah squeezed my shoulder. You just made the evening news, Jake. Let them talk, I said. It's time the truth had a microphone. Thought it was over, but peace never comes easy. 3 days later, environmental notice. Chemical contamination in Mission Draw Creek. All water flow to be suspended pending investigation. I knew who was behind it. Bethany, desperate, sloppy. Sarah got independent lab results. My land was clean. The contamination started inside Cedar Mesa. Chemicals bought by the HOA delivered to Bethany's house. Sheriff McKay raided her property. Found everything. Falsified reports, checks, chemical receipts. Bethany and her inspector both arrested. When the news broke, her mugshot everywhere. Sheriff McKay's words stuck with me. The law may flow slow, but it always reaches level ground. For the first time in months, I slept easy, cricket singing, creek running free. Weeks passed. Rain finally came. The new HOA board came to me, folder in hand, apology signed, fair contract for shared water, a promise to help restore the creek. You don't owe me, I said. You owe the land. Keep it honest, and we'll all have enough. That weekend, I watched kids planting saplings by the water, my mother smiling from her chair. The grass grew thick. The dragonflies came back. The pastures healed, so did I. Sarah brought the settlement, legal closure. Bethany and Green both pleaded guilty. Every sin of those fraudulent fees returned to the residents. We sat by the water, quiet, watching the moon reflect off the creek. Funny thing about water, I said. It forgives, but it never forgets. She smiled. Neither do we. As the world turned, the land remembered. The fences, the fights, the quiet restoration. I tipped my hat to the creek and turned for home, knowing at last it was over. Not with revenge, but with balance restored. And if you've ever fought for what's yours, if you've tasted that kind of hard-won justice, you know it's worth every drop of sweat. So tell me, where do you draw the line between defending what's right and letting things slide? Drop your story, your thoughts on justice, right down in the comments. Because this isn't just about water or land. It's about standing your ground, even when the world tells you to move. And if stories like this speak to you, don't forget to subscribe. There's plenty more truth waiting down the road.